All right, so here we are again. It's another Sunday morning. And the posh group got up for breakfast. And then some of us got up a little earlier. Yeah, laugh, you guys. So we're on rule 3. This is white magic. The subject matter here is soul, light, and body light. So, you know, this stuff is always talking about the light here, the light there, see the light, so on and so forth. So this will give us a little better idea of what light we're talking about. You know, whether it's a 30-watt light bulb or a 50 or a 250, or if it's the one that you can turn into different levels. Remember those? I don't know. Do they have those lamps anymore?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe that's what we can compare this to when we're all done. Let's see. So in these rules for magic, the laws of creative work are embodied, and the means whereby man can function as an incarnated soul. And literally the word creative work, he's going to explain, because we have been created to the point we're at now. And we actually know now from some of our other reading material that we have the capacity to create. So the word isn't just a nice, cute little word when he talks about creative in any of this material. So the laws of creative work are embodied, and that means whereby man can function as an incarnated soul. They do not deal primarily with rules governing man's development. Okay. Incidentally, the course, of course, much may be learnt in this connection, for man grows through creative work and understanding, but this is not the primary objective of the teachings. So through the gradually growing synthesis of the meditation process carried on by the soul on its own plane, and that of the aspirant, the man manifests. So, I mean, there's a big sentence right there. It's the soul in meditation that can literally manifest the man. So your soul in meditation is what manifests you in the physical brain, a point of light which has been occultly lighted on the plane of the mind, which is where the soul is. Okay. Light ever signifies 2 things: energy and its manifestation in some form of some kind, for light and matter are synonymous terms. The thought of the man and the idea of the soul have found a point of rapport, and the germ of a thought form has come into being. That's what we are. We're little germs of thought form. Okay. This thought form, when completed, will embody as much of the great plan on which the hierarchy is working as the man can vision, grasp, and embody on the mental plane. So when he comes in, he is going to be able to embody up to the level where he left last time. Okay. And then can grow forward. And that's why they will talk about when if a master chooses to incarnate for whatever reason. I think maybe there were some showed up in the 60s, the Maharishi and a few other names. They will come in, and I think I've had this discussion before, but the question had been asked to them, you know, do you just come in as a master born with all that intelligence? That was not the case. They do go through stages. You know, your early stages, you do want them to come out like human beings. So they've got to go through some of the very basic ones to be able to identify what's going on here. And then there's a point at which they have what they call the recapitulation And when they've grown enough so they can be on that mental plane and function in a healthy way without doing any damage, then they will recapitulate. And the information that came to me through one of my girlfriends who spent a lot of time with the Maharishi, was it can be done very fast for somebody who already has all of that in that soul. It's all developed. It just isn't going to recapitulate till it hits the mental plane, till the development of the body is functioning there. But so you bring back what you did before. In other words, this is the one thing you can take with you, is whatever level of development that you go through this lifetime, you have that, you have access to it. If in the next given lifetime, it's meant to come back, because the soul so determines that, yes, if the soul has something else for you to do the next round that's more focused in a given direction, that would be inclined to be what would occur there. So this thought form, when completed, will embody as much of the great plan on which the hierarchy is working as the man can vision, grasp, and embody on the mental plane. So you can come up to speed with wherever you were. Okay. This in the early stages of a man's aspiration, in his first steps along the path of discipleship, and for the first two initiations, is covered by the word service. So these are the two lower planes, plane 7, plane 6. That's the physical plane and the astral plane. And you get to practice at service. Okay. This
Now,
is where you can
does
do
that
something.
service include, it includes service more than simply spiritual service? What all would service embody in that?
He's going to go
context?
into it in the next couple sentences. But the point I wanted to make is now you're down here where nothing is written in stone with those two, because those are the unprincipled matter. Like I said before, you can, if you have Play-Doh, you can make it, and then you can shape it to something else. Well, look at the different cultures and civilizations that have developed over time on this planet. They come, they go. They are not permanent in the same way that once you get up on the mental plane and the Buddhic plane, I mean, that's principled matter. It's structured. When you look for truth, you're looking in that direction, because once you get up into those realms, you have something that's consistent, something that you work with. Those are the basis of truth of which you can function, and then you work within that system. But early on here, what he's saying, the first two initiations is covered by the word service. So you're learning to serve. You are learning to follow a pattern, learning something has meaning. So he grasps gropingly at first the idea of the unity of life. There's your first initiation. And its manifestation as the brotherhood existing between all forms of that divine life. This subjective ideal gradually leads to an appreciation of the way in which this essential relationship can work out practically. And this can be seen in finding the expression in the great humanitarian efforts in the organizations for the relief of human and animal suffering, and in worldwide efforts for the betterment of the internal relations of nations, religions, and groups. So there's service. On the 7th level, if you will, is that. And so that idea, when you have come to understand that all things are one, initiation number 1, then the mind or the emotions should move towards, well, let's make it better for everyone. Okay. So enough human units have now contacted the hierarchical plan so that it may be safely concluded that the collective brain of the human family, that entity which we call the fourth kingdom in nature, is susceptible to the vision and has fashioned its lighted form on the mental plane. Okay. Later, the thought of service and of self will be found inadequate, and a more suitable form of expression will be found, but this suffices for the present. In other words, on level 7, this is very workable. This looks like a good plan. And it is at that point. What he's saying is later, that won't be enough, because as you move up that chart and you move up those kingdoms, you're going to see other possibilities. When you're down in this first early stage, you're really not looking to bridge that little spot on the upper mental plane, level number 4 to level number 3, to have complete, full conscious connection with your soul. Okay, that's what's hidden in that sentence. Later, the thought of service and of self will be found inadequate, and a more suitable form of expression will be found. But this suffices for the present, because you're at least bringing people into a point where they feel they're a member of this group and they understand so is everybody else. So we need to make room for everyone. Does that answer that, Donnie?
Mhm.
Okay. This thought form created by the aspirant is brought into being by the focused energies of the soul and the reoriented forces of the personality. And so your personality is your physical, your mental, and your emotional. Okay. And so basically, prior to having that initiation 1, where you realize you're part of something and everyone is part of something, prior to that, you're probably as destructive here as you are any potential constructiveness prior to, if I'm saying that in a way that you understand. I'm not sure that the people who are out there who are shooting people with guns and everything else have come to a realization we are all one and we should be taking care of everything. They haven't joined that level of awareness yet. Okay. Ultimately, I expect they will at some point in evolution, but so when I take this sentence, this thought form created by the aspirant is brought into being by the focused energies of the soul, which is the only reason you're here, and the reoriented forces of the personality. So in other words, now the physical, the emotional, and the mental have, when they understand they're part of all of this, all one, then reorient their forces to do good. Let's make it just that simple. Because now they want to work for the betterment of everyone because they realize we're all one. The period wherein the aspirant struggles to achieve that inner quiet and directed attentiveness, which will enable him to hear the voice of the silence. That voice expresses to him through symbol and interpreted life experience the purposes and plans with which he may cooperate according to his stage of development. Those plans will express either the already materialized plans taking group form on the physical plane with which he may cooperate and in whose interest he may submerge his own, or the plan or a fraction of a plan, which is his individual privilege to bring through into manifestation and thus cause to materialize as a group activity on the physical plane. It is the function of some aspirants to aid and to help those groups which are already in functioning activity. It is the function of others to bring into being those forms of activity which are as yet on the subjective plane. Only those aspirants who are freed from personal ambition can truly cooperate in this second aspect of work. Therefore, kill out ambition. So let's talk about ambition for a moment in terms of what it might mean here. You know, this material, this evolution, this whole life direction or whatever, belongs to everyone. Okay. Anyone and everyone can pursue this, and it doesn't take any money. It doesn't take a big company that you have to create before you can do it, or anything else. It's more often than not, they've been wandering sages or whatever who seem to get there first. But I'm coming back to the word ambition. I know there's people who would like to take some of this material and go make a movement out of it, or glean some scientific idea out of it or not, and make themselves rich or wealthy. Okay, that's ambition. That's a plot, you know, in other words, this work is not here to, and it's not going to move you forward if you're here to use it to self-aggrandize yourself in any way when you're functioning on these lower three planes. It will ultimately trip you up, frankly. So if you want to grow personally or put your endeavors somewhere, it has to be something that constantly moves to the good, but it's not ambitious to make your own ego, your family lineage, whatever. Am I making, Tom, am I making that clear?
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, a little
Okay.
louder, good.
Oh,
Maybe.
okay. I'll try to speak louder today. Yeah, I think what I heard, and just to make sure I'm hearing it clearly, so ambition, in other words, it's not so much, but actually it isn't. Ambition is more of a pursuit for your own selfish needs, I guess is a way of putting it. And it's not, if it's something for the greater good of the whole, of the collective, or whatever we want to call it, then that's really not ambition. That's something else. Is that what we're saying?
Right. Yeah, I mean, you're not in there for personal gain.
Right.
I read that the soul is innately about service, and that's the ambition of the soul. And ambition may not be the right word there, Carla, but, and then the lower self, it manifests as desire. So there's that fine line, kind of.
Yeah, and then also maybe rather than ambition with the soul, it's the direction of the soul. But it's also that ambition is for generally a lot of people when they first get into this material, it's spiritual ambition.
Right.
They have it also, and that's and in this case, I'm separating the two a little bit, but it's just like, where am I on this chart? Have I gotten to here? Have I gotten to there? That's spiritual ambition. The mindset without that is, hey, it's great if it comes, you know, I'm doing, he'll get into harmlessness here. In other words, I'm doing everything I can to move in this direction. I know it's all going to add up sometime. It doesn't mean I'm ever gonna have any payoff in this lifetime. You don't know. Because eventually, if you can get your mindset into understanding that you are being already, you are a being, and you are being at this particular level, functioning, because this is the appropriate level. He will say a little later that if you just, the fastest route you can go up that chart is with exercising harmlessness. But the exercising harmlessness is not, I'm doing it because it's going to help me get there. It's just simply because if you are able to do that, you create no obstruction to your upward movement. So, I mean, when people first get into this, there's Chela fever. First of all, they're going to tell everybody about it. Then secondly, they're going to start thinking about where am I, and to the demise of the Theosophical Society, I guess, that ran rampant. But it shouldn't even be a concern of where I am, or am I going to get here or there, because that will block you. All of that stuff will block you from getting there. It's just being open and receptive. You're going to experience whatever you have the capacity to experience in this lifetime. You know it will not be lost. And when you're not here, you're not in time. So it isn't like, oh, I'm sitting there and over here waiting all this time to get back over here into time. Because when you're out of time, there is no time. So that soul is not sitting there panting with bated breath, thinking, I got to get another one out here or something like that, because it doesn't exist with the concept of time that we have. But just being receptive to being able to work as much as you can with this. And that one's a hard one for people to do because the soul is there. And I'm sure the soul is kind of, in a sense, he put you here for a reason. And, and the soul, DK keeps saying, is the initiate. So the soul is the one who wants to be initiated. And, but we think it's us. All right. But it's really not, because your first major in other words, you're going to have the third, you're going to transfer all that consciousness. And then
Hey, Carla,
the fourth,
I don't mean to stop you, but we lost you there for about 20 seconds or so.
with no sound.
Yeah.
Tell me where it was.
The soul put you here for a reason.
Right.
And I think that's kind of where we might have lost you.
Yeah, and DK says the soul is the initiate.
Mm-hmm.
So we think it's us getting initiated, okay? But it's the soul. And the soul, the first major initiation for the masters is the third, which brings you, the little vehicle, the integrated personality. You got all three of your little units working together, and you've got them all up here now. And there's going to be this change of consciousness so that you can be a unit that has full consciousness without needing the soul. So the soul is cutting himself loose. He wants you up here because there is going to be the destruction of the causal body on initiation 4, the next route up, and boom. So he's captured until you can get there is what happens. I don't know. Have you guys ever thought about it that way?
No. Well, only because I think you've said it, you've mentioned it maybe to me before, but
Yeah. So, so anyway, we started with killing out ambition here. But ultimately that's really, we are here and we are experiencing being to the level we are capable at in any given time. But so the ambition only holds you back because ambition is part of the lower three world. It's only down here that we have this concept of achievement and having to do something. And we're doing it for here, not for somewhere else. So anyway, any other comments on that before I leave that? I probably overkilled it. So point number 2, the period wherein he habituates himself to the clear hearing and correct interpretation of the inner voice of the soul and broods reflectively upon the imparted message. During this period, the energy circulates. Oh, you'll like this one, Donnie. A constant rhythmic response to the thought energy of the soul is set up. And figuratively speaking, there is a steady flow of force between that center of energy we call the soul on its own plane and that center of force, which is a human being. The energy travels along the thread we call the sutratma and sets up a vibratory response between the brain and the soul. An interesting angle of information might here be given, as it is my intent in these instructions ever to link up the analogies between the different aspects of divinity as they express themselves in man or in the macrocosm, the heavenly man. The ancient yoga of Atlantean days, which has come down to us in the necessarily fragmentary teaching of the yoga of the centers, conveys to us the information that the reflection of the sutratma in the human organism is called the spinal cord and expresses itself in the 3 nerve channels. These 3 are called the Ida, Pingala, and the central channel, the Sushumna. When the negative and positive forces of the body, which express themselves via the Ida and the Pingala nerve routes, are equilibrialized, the forces can ascend and descend by the central channel to and from the brain, passing through the centers up the spine without hindrance. When this is the case, we have the perfected soul expression in the physical man. This is in reality a correspondence to the sutratma as it links the physical man and the soul, where the sutratma in its turn expresses the positive energy of spirit, the negative energy of matter, and the equilibrialized energy of the soul, the attainment of equilibrium being the present objective of humanity. During the period of later initiations, the positive use of the spiritual energy supersedes the equilibria's use of soul force, but that is a later stage with which the aspirant need not as yet trouble himself. Let him find the noble middle path between the pairs of opposites, and incidentally, he will find that the forces he uses on the physical plane will employ the central nerve channel up the spine. This will occur as the transmission of light and truth to the physical brain. The central channel of the linking sutratma really works out in satisfactory usefulness. These ideas and concepts, speaking in symbol, which come via the sutratmic negative channel are well-meaning but lack force. and peter out into insignificance. They are emotionally colored and lack the organized form which pure mind can give. Those which come via the opposite channel produce too rapid a concretion and are motivated by the personal ambition of a ruling mentality. The mind is ever egotistic, self-seeking, and expresses that personal ambition which carries within it the germ of its own destruction. And of course, remember, the ego and the soul is on the mental plane. When, however, the Sutratmic Sushumna, the central nerve channel, and its energy is employed, the soul, as a magnetic, intelligent creator, transmits its energies. The plans can then mature according to divine purpose and proceed with their building activities in the light. The point of egoic and lunar contact emits ever the point of light, as we have seen from our rules for magic, and that has its focus at the point in the Sutratma, which has its correspondence to the light in the head of the aspirant. The period wherein he sounds the sacred word and blending it with the voice of the ego or the soul sets in motion mental matter for building of his thought form. It is the man on the physical plane who now sounds the word, and he does it 4 ways. He becomes the word incarnated and endeavors to be what he is. And I suppose we can indicate that at that point, he now is looking at that initiatory path as an indication of to be whatever he is. In other words, moving all the way up that chart, if you will, because what he is ultimately is what is at the top. He sounds the word within himself, seeking to do so as the soul. He visualizes himself as the soul, breathing out energy through the medium of that word through the entire system, which his soul animates, his mental, his emotional, his vital, and his physical instruments. He sounds the word literally on the physical plane, thus affecting the 3 grades of matter in his environment. All the time that he is thus occupied, he is holding the mind steady in the light and is keeping his consciousness immovably in the realm of the soul. Also, he carries forward, and this is the most difficult stage, a paralleling activity of the steady visualization of the thought form through which he progresses the plan, which he has contacted, and which he hopes to bring into active being through his own life and in his own environment. So you see, the real vehicle that brings all of this to happen is you physically. And aside from having to feed yourself, which costs you some money, okay, and keep yourself warm and the body healthy, it doesn't need the other things. It needs this first before anything else can happen. It needs man at this point. He is the creator of consciousness. He is creating as he moves up that chart. His consciousness is out there. And a lot of it is creates beautiful and wonderful things. Well, that's how they get there. It's through man and his spiritual development, his development up that chart. And so then it's the question of what does he create? And that gives you some of the answer of his quality at any given point, because he's always creating consciousness. So this is only truly possible when a steady rapport has been established between the soul and the brain. The process involves the capacity of the brain to register what the soul is visioning and becoming aware of in the kingdom of the soul. It involves also a paralleling activity in the mind, where the aspirant must interpret the vision and utilize the concrete intelligent faculty for the wise adaptation of time and of form to the true expression of that which has been learnt. This is by no means an easy thing to do, but the aspirant has eventually to learn to express himself in full consciousness in more than one way, and that simultaneously. He begins to learn a triple activity in this manner, and this the old commentary expresses as follows. The solar orb shines forth in radiant splendor. The illuminated mind reflects the solar glory. The lunar orb rises from the center to the summit and is transformed into a radiant light, sun of light. When these three suns are one, Brahma breaks forth and a lighted world is born. Oh, I'm looking at your face, Donnie. Are you chewing on that one or what?
Mhm. Yeah.
This literally means that when the soul, symbolized as the solar orb, the mind, and the light in the head form one unit, the creative power of the solar angel can express itself in the three worlds and can construct a form through which its energy can actively express itself. The lunar orb is a symbolic way of expressing the solar plexus, which eventually must do two things: blend and fuse the energies of the lower two centers of force and raise these fused energies, and so blending with the energies of the other and higher centers reach the head. And those lower centers, I believe, shift to the above the diaphragm at the third initiation. All of the above embodies a teaching and a theory. This has to be wrought out in the practical experiment and experience and conscious activity of the aspirant. I would also like to point out the nature of the service humanity as a whole is rendering in the general plan of evolution. The rule under our consideration applies not only to the individual man, but to the predestined activity of the fourth kingdom in nature. Through his meditation, discipline, and service, man fans into radiant light, illuminating the three worlds, that point of light which flickered into being at the time of his individualization in past ages. And that was the 18 million years ago, by the way. That is what happened. It is the point of light which flickered into being at the time of his individualization. This finds its reflection in the light in the head. This rapport is set up, which permits not only of vibratory synchronization, but of a radiation and a display of magnetic force, permitting of its recognition in the three worlds of a man's immediate environment. So it is with the human kingdom. As its illumination increases, as its light waxes more potent, its effect upon the subhuman kingdoms is analogous to that of the individual soul, its reflection upon man in physical incarnation. So just our evolution and our being is going to bring everything up below us up. That's the short version. I say analogous as a causative force, though not a correspondence in effects. Note this difference. Humanity is macrocosmic in relation to the subhuman states of consciousness, and this HPB has well pointed out. The effect upon these lesser and more material states is primarily fourfold. The stimulating of the spiritual aspect, expressing itself as the soul in all forms, such as the form of a mineral, a flower, or an animal, the positive aspect of energy in all of these forms will wax stronger, producing radiation, for instance, increasingly in the mineral kingdom. In this lies a hint of the nature of the process that will set a term to our planetary existence and eventually our solar system. Anybody? Now, Bull, I want you to comment on that sentence. Are you there?
Oh, I'm on mute.
Okay.
Man, I said a bunch of good stuff too.
Yeah. Well, I want you to comment on the sentence. It's under number 1.
And this
The
lies a hint of the nature of the process that will set a term to our planetary existence and eventually to our solar system.
Right. Elaborate.
I have to process before I elaborate.
Well, let's go into cosmology for a moment, or space, the evaluation. Don't they go out there and they evaluate the state of a star system or whatever, and they have calculated that, all right, well, it's at this stage or that?
Yeah, they did. I think it was Stephen Hawking and a couple of other super smart people were trying to figure out what the equation would be to like reverse engineer, basically, since they have all the information from, basically everything out that we can see with all of our technology, where everything is moving, which direction, how fast, all the other factors put in. And then, so, essentially they can get like a rewind button to pull everything back in to when, they believe the creation / Big Bang, whatever you want to call it, happened. So I think they're saying like 18 billion years or something for the universe. And then I think Earth was something, it was less.
Okay, so now this one, the stimulating of the spiritual aspect, expressing itself as the soul in all forms, such as the form of a mineral, a flower, or an animal. The positive aspect of energy in all these forms will wax stronger, producing radiation, for instance, increasingly in the mineral kingdom. In this lies a hint of the nature of the process that will set a term to our own planetary existence and eventually to our solar system. So he's going forward, right? That's what's implying here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that we will help blow it all up eventually in pure consciousness, but basically we're part of the process that's going to evolve this planet plus this solar system, probably to its next level. We're an important part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
Which is now you can understand why there's been a very big drive to try to stop that process.
Yeah, I want to trap us all here and not let us evolve.
Yeah, because we are the key to that evolution. So if there's a group of beings or whatever you want to call them who would like to stop time,
Mm-hmm.
then they have to stop the process of who and what we are.
Yeah. That makes sense. If you hold off the catalyst that is gonna, basically make everything gel together, then you prevent the process from happening.
Yeah. I mean, everybody has these books. These books have been out there for a long time. And
Yeah.
I'm sure there's other books that are also quite elucidating. Okay. And nobody's really stopped from having access to this material. It's what you do with it.
Yeah. Now, do you think those people have the same material and then just decide to go the other way, or do they have other material that's like kind of pushing them that way?
Well, I think he gets into it a little bit later, but basically the bottom line is they haven't moved up. You've got to, as humanity from the very 18 million years ago, if you will, process of individualization, the process of making that transition from strictly the animal kingdom into the human animal kingdom, moving into being human, what we define as being human, has not been an easy route, and it wasn't a slam dunk, which I think he's going to cover in here. So, there's been the foxtrot or the two-step or whatever, a couple steps forward, a step back, and so on and so forth. This process has not been smooth, never has. And it's the percentage of the light increases as you move up. But if you're not moving up very quickly, then whatever was going on in those lower levels is the level where you function. It is what you experience. It's what you're used to. It's what you can see. You can't see beyond where you are. So it isn't like, oh, well, I'm doing this stuff down here, but look, oh, I see what they're doing way up there. And isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
They can't see it. So I think it would, and I think, well, in fact, this is probably what's coming up next. So let's try another sentence or two and then come back to that if it doesn't answer it. But I think the answer you want is down here. So anyway, we're going to speed things up a little bit with our consciousness. In the vegetable kingdom, the effects will be the demonstration of increased beauty and diversity, the evolution of new species with an objective impossible to explain to those not yet initiate, the production of nutritive forms which will serve the needs of the lesser devas, and angels will be one of the results. So in the animal kingdom, the effect will be the elimination of pain and suffering and a return to the ideal conditions of the Garden of Eden. Everybody promises that. Well, one day we'll probably get it. When man functions as a soul, he heals, he stimulates and vitalizes, he transmits the spiritual forces of the universe and all harmful emanations and all destructive forces find in the human kingdom a barrier. So evil and its effects are largely dependent upon humanity for a functioning channel. Humanity's function is to transmit and handle force. This is done in the early and ignorant stages destructively and with harmful results. Later, when acting under the influence of the soul, the force is rightly and wisely handled and good eventuates. Does that answer that, Bull?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I think it's a matter of, we can say it's a matter of evolution, or I suppose we could say it's a matter of time, which is the same as a matter of evolution. It's moving on up from where once came in total now. I think in a lot of earlier texts or videos, I said, we came from dirt. In other words, we carry all of that history in us. Every time someone is born, it's all there. It's just probably buried pretty deep now. It says later, when acting under the influence of the soul, force is rightly and wisely handled and good eventuates. Because basically, what have we got down here? We've got forces. We don't have the direct energy from the triad or the reflections from the monad. So true indeed it is that the whole creation travails in pain until now, waiting for the manifestation of the sons of God. You've worked your way all the way up that chart to a point where you are able to, at that third initiation on the mental plane level, sub-level number 3, you got to make the leg up yet. We're not all there yet. That's what the building little bridge is. And then you go over at that initiation. On that level, you can hook up to the spiritual triad. And that's what you've been trying to do. That's what all this has been about, is creating something from the base, from the bottom, working it all the way up, every one of those little sub levels, and creating the structure that can handle it. That's what your physical is doing. When this energy, you make a contact with it and it starts moving, it's developing, further developing the structure you have. So it's working you all the way up to that point. And that's what he's talking about, the manifestation of the sons of God. And so number 2 is the bringing of light. Humanity is the planetary light bearer, transmitting the light of knowledge, of wisdom, and of understanding. And this in the esoteric sense. And probably we don't see it kind of that way, because what we see is we see a printed book as knowledge, which is not light. In other words, this book doesn't light up. I mean, at least not for me. It might for other people. But in other words, you don't open the page and the light shines out at you. That information is down in a tangible manner. So, but all of the knowledge in here is the transmitting of light, of wisdom, of understanding, and this in the esoteric sense. These 3 aspects of light carry 3 aspects of soul energy to the soul in all forms through the medium of the anima mundi, or the world soul. So every time there's more awareness for humanity, or it moves up, it transmits through the world soul and benefits everything, the kingdoms beneath us, if you will. So we're doing a lot more than we understand. We're not understanding ourselves enough, and we're not giving humanity enough credit for the work we're doing. I don't even think we're focusing on it. And probably part of it is because the Christianity wanted to kind of hold that in abeyance, and the church be the arbitrator of everything. So we weren't given a lot of credit. I mean, we were the sinners, right? Who always had to be trying to be better or gooder, or depending upon what level of communication you're talking to. If you're children, it's gooder. And so we don't understand our place and our real purpose here, in terms of the fact that these 3 aspects of light carry 3 aspects of soul energy to the soul in all forms through the medium of the anima mundi, the world soul. Physically speaking, This can be realized if we can appreciate the difference between our planetary illumination today and that of 500 years ago. Our brilliantly lit cities, our rural districts shining through the night with their lighted streets and homes, our airways outlined with their searchlights and fields of blazing globes, our oceans dotted with their lighted ships, and increasingly our lighted airstrips will be seen darting through the skies, airships. These are but the result of man's growing illumination. His knowledge aspect of light has brought this into being. Who shall say what will eventuate when the wisdom aspect predominates? When these are welded by understanding, the soul will control in the three worlds and in all the kingdoms of nature. And I would expect we should be seeing the Aquarian age bring a lot of this forward. I would think eventually that's going to be taught in schools and in place of some of whatever is taught in schools now, is our place in this entire system and our responsibilities because of it. The transmission, number 3, is the transmission of energy. The clue to the significance of this can be grasped as a concept, though as yet will fail of comprehension in the realization that the human kingdom acts upon and affects the 3 subhuman kingdoms. The downpouring spiral triangle and the upraising matter triangle meet point to point in humanity when the point of balance can be found. In man's achievement and spiritualization is the hope of the world. Mankind itself is the world savior, of which all world saviors have but been the symbol and the guarantee. The blending of the Deva and the angel evolution and the human. This is a mystery which will be solved as man arrives at the consciousness of his own solar angel, only to discover that that too is also but a form of life which, having served its purpose, must be left behind. And that is the 4th initiation, the destruction of the causal body, is what he's talking about. The angel or Deva evolution is one of the great lines of force contained in the divine expression, and the solar angels, the Agnishvatas of the secret doctrine and of a treatise on cosmic fire, belong in their form aspect to this line. Thus, humanity serves, and in the development of a conscious aptitude for service, in the growth of a conscious understanding of the individual part to be played in the working out of the plan and in the rendering of the personality subject of the soul, will come a steady progress of humanity towards its goal of world service. And I find it interesting because when we're on the lower levels, service is a word. It is a description of a direction of giving some energy. But it's in a category. There's a category of service. There's a category of doing something else, and a category of this and that. And service is separated as a category because it's a small range of people. As you move up this chart and you make those points, okay, service and being become the same thing. In other words, it's not, okay, well, I'm going to devote this percentage of my being to service. This is what that evolution is. I don't know if I'm saying that in a way that I communicate what I'm saying, but when you're down in number 1, first initiation, we talk about, oh yes, you direct some of your energy to service. Okay, not your whole life, because you got all these other things going on, okay, that aren't related to service, other than self-service maybe, you know, something to better your life. But as you move up, that energy of being becomes a greater percentage until eventually you just find that the being and service are one and the same. They always were. It's just that you were expressing a little bit of being down here consciously. And the more you did, the more your life becomes a life of service. Because it's actually the expression of that monadic energy. And you're now becoming more in union with that than of any of the other sub-levels before that. That makes sense, Donnie? Can you see that?
Yeah, your life becomes just a field of service. This whole thing is just service.
Yeah, and it's not separated. In other words, you don't classify, okay, this amount of energy is for service or something.
Right.
You're just by being and the expression of being, and so you're getting closer to that monadic energy. Well, that monadic energy has been servicing this whole system on its entire involution. It's bottoming out, it's coming back up, and now creating a vehicle that of which we are the current product, that is going to be able to bring this all the way back up to the top, and then we'll move to the third solar system. But for now, we're here, or third system, period, not just a solar system. It'll be cosmic, I'm sure. And so service is not ever thought of as anything but your sense of being when you get up to a certain point. But before that, it's just sections of your life devoted to that. That can make you feel good, see? And then you can go over here and do whatever else you got to do that's for your own trip over here, if you will. The blending of that Deva and angel evolution and the human is because down here, we're not supposed to be dorking around with those Devas. I mean, we can appreciate the beauty. They hold the line just 1 minute. Early morning coffee delivery here.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, some of the neighbors down the way are in, so he brings me a cup with his wife found this cup with a cockroach in it, you know, one of those ceramic little deals.
Mm.
So he brought it to me, yes, I think it was yesterday. And I was just transferring the coffee so I could take the cup back. And he didn't hear me scream or anything. He was disappointed, I guess, all morning. It blew his morning because I didn't react to the cup with the cockroach in it, you know. Well, first of all, it was the wrong color cockroach for here. So after that, where do you go? Nowhere. So anyway, so we got past a little of the service. So Tom, what do you, when he talks about us being the bringers of light, humanity, what do you think? What about your little hellos on your walk?
Oh, yeah. So we have to be, I guess we have to spread love, right?
Yeah,
Spread joy
Yeah,
and happiness. Spread that energy, because it sparks something.
that is the
Um,
light. I mean, that is light.
Right. So go out there and profess it and spread it and hope that it catches on like wildfire. Get that energy flowing across all of humanity.
Yeah.
Just go out there and connect.
Yeah, ultimately, that is exactly what we're supposed to do. Because it's the fundamental pattern that needs to occur, because that is, it's what we call love. Okay. But it's actually the creation of consciousness. Okay. You know, we hooked love up with a lot of stuff that happens on the astral plane and everything we can imagine there, and think that is love. But like I said, when you move up to the Buddhic plane, which is supposed to be the plane of love, it's identified as the plane of pure reason, which means those connections of spirit and matter are accurate and fundamentally sound. And that it took away all of that astral plane love and that everything that everybody can imagine putting together in a polarity, or mixing the polarities, or however you want to look at it. And now we're down to, when we get to there, you're where you're going to find things. Well, you find the truth on that plane. It's abstract thinking, it's truth. It's we're in a whole different world at that point of functionality. But basically, we are the bringers of light.
Jesus said he cast fire upon the earth, and he's watching over it until it blazes.
Well, I think there's some efforts to positively make it blaze. I mean, what I see out there are movements. Probably that meditation today that Simon is asking, those 5 minutes, it falls right into that category.
We are those flames, right?
Yes. Yeah, we've all got the little divine spark. In fact, it'll show up here again in a few pages. So remind me where I stopped off now that I.
Thus humanity serves. Do we pass that already?
Okay.
No, I think that's where we
Yeah,
left off. I think.
yeah, because I did say Agri shot Svatas. I remember that. Yeah, thus humanity serves, and in the development of a conscious aptitude for service, in the growth of a conscious understanding of the individual part to be played in the working out of the plan, and in the rendering of the personality subject to the soul, will come the steady progress of humanity towards its goal of world service. You know, and eventually you would be, if you focus in this realm, they're not. Eventually, most of your movements will be in service. They'll have some aspect of service in them that you will be consciously aware of. May I speak a word here so as to make this consummation a practical goal in your life? Harmful magnetic conditions as the result of man's wrong handling of force are the causes of evil in the world around us. And notice he's talking about magnetic conditions, because basically this is a positive, negative electromagnetic system we're in, especially when you're dealing with creation of consciousness. So how can we as individuals change this? By the development in ourselves of harmlessness. Therefore, study yourself from this angle. Study your daily conduct and words and thoughts, so as to make them utterly harmless. Set yourself to think those thoughts about yourself and others which will be constructive and positive, and hence harmless in their effects. Study your emotional effect on others so that by no mood, no depression, no emotional reaction can you harm a fellow man. Remember, in this connection, violent spiritual aspiration and enthusiasm, misplaced or misdirected, may quite easily harm a fellow man. So look not only to your wrong tendencies, but to the use of your virtues. Okay. Because there's, what do they say? There's no, it's a reformed, anybody who's reformed from something, there's nobody probably more zealous than, either a reformed alcoholic or something. I remember those when I was younger, and probably even people who originally find this got to be going telling everybody about it, kind of thing, kind of ramming it down their throat or whatever. And, sometimes that can get through to some people, but other times it just makes them go in the wrong direction. It's like because I've done astrology for a long time, and I've had adults whose parents' mother was an astrologer or something. Man, they don't want nothing to do with it. They had it crammed down their throat when they were younger, and they'll want absolutely no part of it. So that's where, you've had a little bit of an overzealousness on the part of somebody who's found the light, or the truth or the way, and is going to
I think
help.
it's mentioned in the books that that's actually just a distinct part of the journey at some point.
Well, it is, but what he's saying here is, now when you want to get to the harmlessness part
Right.
of your journey,
Yeah, we got to move past that.
yeah, it's not for everybody. It's like that link that I sent. I had seen yesterday online who didn't seem to be able to find a place where much of this spiritual stuff is discussed, so on and so forth. And so I sent a link back and I said, well, if you really, you want, you could go to this website and they are discussing it there, and it's put online for anybody else who wants to watch, and if it works for you, fine. But if not, take a U-turn and just click off the website. In other words, not shoving it down their throat, just saying, hey, it's here, it's available. If you can't find people anywhere else who are talking about this in your environment, there you can plug it in if you want. But if you don't want, that's fine too. Just like DK in the book, he says, hey, take a look at it. If you find that there's truth in it, fine. If not, turn and head off some other direction. If harmlessness is the keynote of your life, you will do more to produce right, harmonious conditions in your personality than any amount of discipline along any other lines. The drastic purgation brought about by the attempt to be harmless will go far to eliminate wrong states of consciousness. See to it, therefore, and bring this idea in your evening review. I would also like to urge each one who reads these pages to make a fresh beginning in spiritual living. I would say to him, forget all past achievements, realize fervor, and concentrate upon the plan. And that one is also a biggie if you want to move along this initiatory path, because as long as you're hanging on to, well, I did the first initiation or something, as long as you hang on to that as being important, you're not going any further, because you've just put yourself in park. You have to let go of whatever that achievement is that you feel that you've made, and let it go, because it's just like the past, present, and the future. Hey, the past is past, the now is right here, and the future hasn't happened yet. So if you can stay in the now and let go of the projections, the remembrances on one end, the projections on the other, then you've got a freer path to move, to go forward. By this time, some progress in group realization has surely been made, and less interest in the separated self has been gained. More faith in the good law, which guides all creation to ultimate perfection, has been visioned without doubt. And through this vision has come the capacity to take one's eyes off the affairs of individual experience and fasten them onto the working out of the purpose for the whole. This is the objective and the goal. Breadth of vision, inclusiveness of understanding, and a widened horizon are the preliminary essentials to all work under the guidance of the hierarchy of adepts. The stabilizing of the consciousness in the one life and the recognition of the basic unity of all creation has to be somewhat developed before anyone can be trusted with certain knowledges and words of power and manipulation of those forces which bring the subjective reality into outer manifestation. Therefore, I say to you at this time, I am older and perhaps more experienced, disciplined, and worker in the great vineyard of the Lord. Practice harmlessness with zest and understanding, for it is, if truly carried out, the destroyer of all limitation. Harmfulness is based on selfishness and on an egocentric attitude. It is the demonstration of forces concentrated for self-enforcement, self-aggrandizement, and self-gratification. Harmlessness is the expression of the life of man who realizes himself to be everywhere, who lives consciously as a soul, whose nature is love, whose method is inclusiveness, and to whom all forms are alike in that they veil and hide the light, but are but the externalizations of the one infinite being. This realization, let me remind you, will demonstrate in a true comprehension of a brother's need, divorced from sentiment and expediency. It will lead to that silence of the tongue which grows out of non-reference to the separate self. It will produce that instantaneousness response to true need, which characterizes the great ones who, passing beneath the outer appearance, see the inner cause, which produces conditions noted in the outer life. And so from that point of wisdom, true help and guidance can be given. Harmlessness brings about in the life caution in judgment, reticence in speech, ability to refrain from impulsive action, and the demonstration of a non-critical spirit. Now that must be a hard, well, I was going to say a hard one for Scorpios, and in the long run, probably so, because they have a list of zingers. They're just waiting to deliver when the moment comes. Melinda.
I'm a Scorpio, but also
Yeah.
I have to go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm
Right
sorry.
as you say that, I'm like, wait, what? I'm a Scorpio. What are you talking about?
Yeah, well, generally they have a little collection in there. They have a sense of what they feel has been injustices done, and eventually they will rectify them. Uh-huh.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Right. And they see a lot of things, you see, so they see secrets and they see stuff like that. They don't say anything about it. They just keep it stored up so that when the
Our little
right
hit
moment
list.
comes,
Yeah.
they're you know, they go for either the jugular or the heart, wherever they want to go, but man, can they nail it.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Good
I
job,
feel-
Melinda.
What? I don't know. I would never do something like that.
That was
I've
from
never-
Bull, who knows you best, that comment, right?
Bull, who's that? I don't even know who that is. Weird.
Anyway, have a great day.
I will. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Bye.
see you
Good
next
day
week.
being a
Next week.
Scorpio.
What'd you say, Bull?
I was just telling Linda to have a good day being a Scorpio.
Oh,
Yeah, try not to whip that tail around.
yeah.
No kidding.
Oh no, they're and they're very good at that. And you know, if you look at the chart as a progression of our development, the Scorpio comes before Sagittarius, and Scorpio really was vigilante law. And the next evolution, the next sign is Sagittarius, which then created a body of law that everybody is responsible to. Okay, but there was a period of time, I mean, look at the wild west, and look at some periods of in a lot of places where wrongs were done and there was no uniform law to govern, you know, and so certain amount of those wrongs were rectified by somebody who came along who personally saw and evaluated this is wrong. That's the vigilante law. It's within the eye of the beholder that he determines this was a right or a wrong. But the next stage of development in the chart, like I said, when you go, is now we get a body of law that is appropriate in our case for our country, our constitution, everyone is subject to. And then it's codified so that you've, by the time you get to government, they codify the law. But at some point, vigilante law was needed because you didn't have the other governmental development and codification and so on and so forth. Yeah, am I seeing a yes there, Donnie?
Makes sense.
Yeah, well, but Scorpios definitely, I mean, they hit their mark when they let her loose. The zingers, and have they got a tongue?
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, no, they they definitely, yeah, they just go right straight to the heart of something. Thomas, I'm seeing you laugh there.
Well, I think Tauruses do a little bit of that too, don't they? Or at least I
Yeah.
do.
I think they're a little more mild-mannered at it
But
than,
we do it strategically.
yeah, you're solid earth. But and you know, there is a point at which when issues come up and you're used to responding to something, I'm not talking now about zingers, but just you're used to responding, and there's a time when it comes where you just say, look, I'm not even going there. I'm just not going there, you know, and that takes you out of that loop. So that in itself is a early stage of harmlessness. Is I'm no longer gonna interact with that. I've got other places to be. I've got better things to do with my time. So all right, Donnie, where did I drop off?
We were talking about harmlessness
Is it the
and
top of 102 or did we get past that?
we
I think we're actually in page 103,
Okay.
about almost to the end of that first paragraph on the page.
paragraph.
Whereas harmlessness brings about in life caution and judgment. Where's this?
Oh yeah, the reticence in
Reticence in
speech, right?
speech.
Ability to refrain from impulsive action. That's and the demonstration of a non-critical spirit. Oh, do you recognize what, is that what you were saying, Tom? You recognize those?
A little bit impulsiveness.
Yeah,
I struggle with a couple of those.
yeah. So free passage can be given to the forces of true love and to those spiritual energies which seem to vitalize personality, leading consequently to right action. Let harmlessness therefore be the keynote of your life. An evening review should be carried forward entirely upon this line. Divide the review work into 3 parts and consider harmlessness in thought, which will primarily result in the control of speech. Harmlessness in emotional reaction. This will result in being a channel for the love aspect of the soul. And harmlessness in act. This will produce poise, skill in action, and the release of the creative will. So these 3 approaches to the subject should be studied from their effects upon one's own self and development, and from their effect upon those whom one contacts and upon one's environing associates. May I interpolate here the remark that I was make suggestions based on experience in occult work. There is no obligation to obey. We seek to train intelligent servers of the race, and these are developed by self-initiated effort. And it's always self-initiated effort. You are the one who has to do the work. Okay. Freedom in action and discrimination in method, and not by unquestioning obedience, negative acquisition, or blind following. Let this not be forgotten. If any command may ever emanate from the subjective band of teachers of whom I am a humbler member, let it be to follow the dictates of your own soul and prompting of your own higher self. And that's where you always need to go back to. Because you need to ask within, and that's who you ultimately have to be at peace with. Before we proceed to an analysis of this rule and of the previous ones, for rules 1 and 2 are the 2 halves of a whole, I would like to remind you that in this series of meditations upon these ancient formulas, we are concerned with the magical work of the aspirant as a co-worker in the enterprises of the Great White Lodge. We are dealing with the methods of white magic. Let me remind you also that the magical work of our planetary hierarchy consists of tending the psyche in the world of forms, so that the unfolding flower of the soul may be nurtured and fostered in such wise that radiant glory, magnetic force, and ultimately spiritual energy may be demonstrated through the medium of the forms. That's us and every other form that's out there. Thus, the power of the 3 rays of divine manifestation may be seen. The first ray, spiritual energy; second ray, magnetic force; and third ray, the radiant glory. These rays likewise find their microcosm reflections in the aura of perfected man. The first ray is monadic spiritual energy, that's the head center. Second ray, the egoic magnetic force, the heart center. Third ray, the personality, the radiant glory, and that's the solar plexus. You inquire, why do I not say the throat center? Because the centers below the diaphragm symbolize primarily the personal lower self, and in their synthesizing center, the solar plexus, express the magnetic force of the matter aspect in man. The throat center is swept into increasing creative activity as the personality vibrates to the soul. Let us now consider the words at the end of the previous rule. The lower light is thrown upward, and the greater light illuminates the 3, and the work of the 4 proceedeth. So, what of this lower light? the student should remember that for the present purposes, he has 3 bodies of light to consider. There is the radiant body of the soul itself, found on its own plane and frequently called the Karana Sarir, or the causal body. And the reason it's the causal body is because it's the one that causes you to be incarnated. So that's why we call it the causal body. There is the vital or etheric body, the vehicle of prana, which is the body of golden light, or rather the flame colored vehicle. Now, remember when we talked about that we were one golden line of light, and that creates our whole form. It just keeps weaving around till we got what we got now. And that would be that radiant body of the soul itself, found on its own plane. And there is, that's the vital body. There is the vital or etheric body, the vehicle of prana, which is the body of golden light and rather flame colored vehicle. So that's, in fact, I think you even, was it golden in the Matrix? It's most definitely golden in Doctor Strange. We saw the pattern of light in the Matrix, you know, when they turned into the telephone, so to speak. Anyway, or moved through there. But I don't know whether they did it in white or in yellow. But the energies that they pulled out of the etheric in Doctor Strange were all golden, and then some of it was mixed with a little red. Then there is the body of dark light, which is the occult way of referring to the hidden light of the physical body and to the light latent in the atom itself. So these 3 types of energy are referred to in the old commentary under the following symbolic terms. When the radiant light of the solar angel is fused with the golden light of the cosmic intermediary, it awakens from darkness the rush light of Anu, the speck, which is a nice way of putting it. The cosmic intermediary is the term given to the etheric body, which is part and parcel of the universal ether. It is through the etheric body that all energies flow, whether emanating from the soul or from the sun or from a planet. Along those living lines of fiery essence pass all the contacts that do not emanate specifically from the tangible world. And it also puts us in touch with, how does he put it? The universal ether. So we're in touch with the entire rest of the universe out there via that etheric body. And those are the top 4 levels on the etheric plane. And it's the same etheric functions. The planet has it, so it relates to the other planets in our solar system, but that etheric body is out there everywhere, which puts us all back in the unit of one. So with everything that we see out there when we look up in the heavens. The cosmic intermediary is the term given to the etheric body, which is part and parcel of the universal etheric. It is through the etheric body that all energies flow, whether from the soul, from the sun, from a planet. Along those living lines of fiery essence pass all the contacts that do not emanate specifically from the tangible world. The dark light of the tiny atoms of which the physical vehicle is constructed is responsive to the stimulation passing down from the soul into its vehicle. And when the man is under the control of the soul, there eventuates the shining forth of the light throughout the body. This shows as the radiance emanating from the bodies of adepts and saints, giving the effect of bright and shining light. Now, your second ray energy, of which this is a second second system, is a system of light, because the union of spirit and matter, every time there's that union, there's a little light is given off. Okay, so the first ray, for the most part, doesn't have that light visible. It is the union of that third ray energy, that first ray energy, that which came from the first system, of which we are now the second, and we are in the creation of putting together the first ray now and that third ray, which is creating what we are doing here. So that's where you're going to see the most light. The most light's going to show up there. Okay. So, for example, they talk about the first ray. Let's see, what do they say? They do not visualize well. They do not necessarily see in color. I mean, you could have other ray structures which may fold over and give you some of those talents. Yeah, you're not gonna see their light much, because it's the fullness of whatever is going to be developed into isn't apparent yet. So anyway, when the radiant light of the soul, and the soul is a creation of this second ray system. Okay. And is blended with the magnetic light of the vital body, it stimulates the atoms of the physical body to such an extent that each atom becomes in turn a tiny radiant center. This only becomes possible when the head, the heart, the solar plexus, and the center at the base of the spine are connected in a peculiar fashion, which is one of the secrets of the first initiation. When these four are in close cooperation, the floor of the triangle, as it's symbolically called, is prepared for the magical work. In other words, these can be enumerated as follows. The physical material form with its center at the base of the spine, the vital body working through the heart center where the life principle has its seat. The activities of the body which are due to this stimulation are carried through the circulation to the blood, the emotional body working through the solar plexus center, and the head center, the directing agent of the soul and its interpreter, the mind. These four are in complete accord and alignment. When this is the case, the work of initiation and its interludes of active discipleship become possible. Before this time, the work cannot proceed. This is foreshadowed in the aspirant when there is enacted a symbolic happening in the light in the head, which is the forerunner of the later stage of initiation. In this stage, the soul light penetrates into the region of the pineal gland, and there it produces an irradiation of the ethers of the head, of the vital airs, and this produces a stimulation of the atoms of the brain so that their light is fused and blended with the other two, the etheric light and the soul light, and there is then produced that inner radiant sun of which the aspirant becomes conscious in his physical brain experience. Frequently, students speak of a diffused light or a glow. This is the light of the physical plane atoms of which the brain is composed. Later, they may speak of seeing what appears like a sun in the head. This is contacting of etheric light plus the physical atomic light. Later, they become aware of an intensely bright electric light. This is the soul light plus the etheric and the atomic. When that is seen, they frequently become aware of a dark center within the radiant sun. This is the entrance to the path disclosed by the shining of the light upon the door. Students must remember that it is possible to have reached a high stage of spiritual consciousness without seeing any of this brain radiance. This is altogether in the nature of phenomena and is largely determined by the caliber of the physical body, by past karma and achievement, and the ability of the aspirant to bring down power from on high and to hold that energy steady in the brain center whilst he himself in meditation is detached from the form aspect and can look serenely at it. So is that a challenge for your meditations?
Certainly.
Oh, that's page 107. Just remember it.
That sticks in our heads, I believe, as it is, because earlier on, he talks about, our ability to hold steady in the light. And I think that's something that sticks with us somehow.
Yeah, well, in this case, but then he's also saying now, not only are you going to hold steady in the light, you're going to bring your consciousness out so you can look back at yourself.
Say that again. So you will look back at yourself, you said?
That's what he just said. In other words, he said, this is altogether the nature of phenomena is largely determined by the caliber of the physical body, by past karma and achievement and ability of the aspirant to bring down power from on high and to hold that energy steady in the brain center, whilst he himself in meditation is detached from the form aspect and can look serenely at it. Yeah, so that's when this has been accomplished, and it is not an objective to be worked for. So he tells you about it, right? But it's simply an indication to be registered in the consciousness and then dismissed. The consequent stimulation produces a reaction of the physical body, the magnetic power of the light in the head and the radiant force of the soul produce stimulation. The centers begin to vibrate, and their vibration awakens the atoms of the material body until eventually the powers of the vibrating etheric body have swung even the lowest center in line with the highest. Thus, the fires of the body, the sum total of the energy of the atoms, are swept into increased activity until such time as there is a rising up the spine of that fiery energy. This is brought about by the magnetic control of the soul seated on the throne between the eyebrows. Here enters in the work of one of the means of yoga, abstraction or withdrawal, where the three lights are blended, where the centers are aroused and the atoms are vibrating. It becomes possible for man to center all three in the head at will. Then, by act of the will and the knowledge of certain words of power, he can enter into samadhi and be withdrawn from his body, carrying the light with him. In this way, the greater light, the three fused and blended, illuminates the three worlds of man's endeavor, and the light is thrown upward and illuminates all the spheres of man's conscious and unconscious experience. This is spoken of in the occult writings of the masters in these words. Then the bull of God carries the light in his forehead, and his eye transmits the radiance. His head with magnetic force resembles the blazing sun, and from the lotus of the head, the path of light issues. It enters into the greater being, producing a living fire. The bull of God sees the solar angel and knows that the angel will be the light wherein he walks. Gracious.
Oh, the irony.
Huh?
Oh, the irony.
The irony?
Yeah, well, we got the bull right here.
Oh, yeah, right. We give him a good shake. When the work of the four proceeds, the four are at one. The solar angel is identified with his instrument, the life of the sheaths. That's the personality, integrated personality. The life of the sheaths is subordinated to the life of the inner divinity. The light of the sheaths is fused with the light of the soul. The head and the heart and the base of the spine are geometrically aligned, and certain developments become possible. So there's plenty to think about there, huh?
Yeah, well, it's pretty deep stuff right there. I was just thinking that, like and as far as the sheaths, he's referring to,
The physical, the emotional, and the mental.
right. So in just saying that, there's work in that somewhere.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's the integration of the personality, which means that your physical, your emotional, and your mental ideology for each of the three, because you know they have their own direction to begin with. I mean, you can be doing one thing, thinking another, and emotionally be totally torn between the two because you know it shouldn't even be there. Okay. That is not an integrated personality. But when the physical, the emotional, and the mental work as one unit, that's when the soul is interested in you. Prior to that, is not interested, for your own protection as much as anything else. Because to activate and bring you energy when you're, in a sense, spastic, in a way, because these are not unified. I mean, I understand we use it for a term for lack of coordination in the physical, but it's a lack of coordination of these as one unit. Any energy that contact you would make with the soul and any connection he would have would just further activate the behavior pattern of the non-integrated personality. So that would, and you can't hook up and keep going without it being that. So now you've just undone probably whatever level you were at and thrown you off. And that's why he says it takes 2-3 lifetimes at least to get you back on track. So it's more often than not for your own protection that, in fact, he talks about even masters cannot see what's ahead, and that's for their own protection, because what's going to be ahead is going to be a stronger light than they are, or that wouldn't be their future. Okay, so if you're sitting here functioning in whatever level you've got, and this stronger light is shining at you, and by now you should know that light, when it hits you, burns. You know, it's then how could a master even move forward? I mean, you got this thing here, you're not ready for it, or you'd be there. So he says even masters cannot see that part is shut off from them for their own protection, and it is on every level. You don't, no more than you would want to walk into a nuclear power plant that's leaking. For your own protection, you don't do things like that. So, and it's, So these rules, the foundation of the magical work of the souls laid down, let's list them for sake of clarity, for certain. The solar angel begins the work of initiating the personality. He withdraws his forces from soul enterprises in the spiritual kingdom and centers his attention on the work to be done. He enters into deep meditation. Magnetic rapport with the instrument in the three worlds is instituted. That's you or I or whomever his soul it is. The instrument man responds and also enters into meditation. The work proceeds in ordered stages with cyclical activity. And that sounds like a simple sentence. It is ordered stages, cyclical activity, and they best be followed. I mean, you're going to want to, if in any of these processes, you want to get every stage, you don't want to miss any. And then when you're winding it up, you need to ground all of that. Okay. It's a process and you go through the whole process. You need it. The light of the soul is thrown downwards. The light of the vital body and the physical form is synchronized with that of the head. The centers swing into activity. The light of the soul and the two other aspects of light are so intense that now all life in the three worlds is illuminated. An alignment is produced. The work of discipleship and of initiation becomes possible and proceeds according to the law of being. And what I would say to you about this is don't try to make these things happen. Just do your meditations. Be open and available. Don't worry about where you are in the cycle, because this will all happen in order. If you're there, ready, waiting, receptive, and it's the right time. Okay. Having to try to think about each one of these points and try to make this stuff happen would be probably a guarantee it wouldn't. Because all you're using is your very small mind to try to order something that it's beyond your little small mind to order. Okay, because this direction is coming from the soul. So it's being receptive to that part of you to entertain this process without obstruction by your thinking about all the details. That's why I was saying to you at one point, you know, I had an astrology student who had come from elsewhere, hadn't worked with this material or anything, but had planetary cycles where I could see that there was this push for this transformation, but he didn't have the education. He didn't have the background. He hadn't had the training to even know the door was available, other than people saying, oh, wow, well, we've hooked you up on this machine and, you know, you're really in a high range for doing this stuff. So let's see if we can force it. Let's see if we can push it. And I mean, that's the last thing, because he had no connection to this other stuff. So all he knew was whatever they were trying to do was causing him a lot of pain. And the rising of the Kundalini, when it's meant to rise, will not cause you pain. Okay, might be a little bit of a jolt, but it's at exactly the right time, and it's going to happen, and it's not going to be destructive. Okay, so like I said, the best thing you can do, you understand now there's a system and there's an order, and if you're in it, you will find out there's a system and an order. And but don't try to make these things happen with the lower mind, because that's not who's going to direct it. And always remember, there's got to be a lot of humans out there who didn't have these books and didn't have other books who have gone through this because it was the right time for them to go through it. Okay. And so, and I suppose maybe that I don't I don't know the biblical terms enough. I don't know what the rapture means, but I would imagine that when you get drawn up in this, and you get little versions before you get really big versions, when you're drawn up in it, you are in it. So as long as you just go with the flow, the inner direction is there. You know, this, you got to remember, the soul is the initiate. It's got its game plan. It's got this down. All it's doing is waiting for you to be receptive enough to be able to entertain it within you. Invite it in. Is that something biblical? You've got to invite God into your life or something, or however you want to put it. There's something to that extent. But not to sit here and figure, okay, well, now I'm at this point here, or how can I make that happen? That would be to your demise, not your.
So it almost sounded like you said there that the soul had, is this the same relationship with the planet to humanity, where the soul has taken a higher initiation and on the and objectively, and we're subjectively need to take it down here?
Well, and this is just probably a real cheap version with words. The soul has been sitting there and waiting, okay, because it wants to make its connection. Its job is to, this little creature that's been developing over eons of time, that now looks like us, has had to do the work to get up to the soul, because the goal is for whatever was on the bottom level, number 7, number 6, number 5, has to get back up to the top. So if it was a game board, you've been given a ladder.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's over there, it's the soul. It's created in this system. This is a second solar system creation that was put there, but you got to get there. Is it Chutes and Ladders? Is that the game board that the kids have, that, you know, you okay, so this is
Yeah,
the
Jack
whole
and Fiends talk. Yeah.
yeah. So this gets you, the whole idea is we've worked our way up. We got that little dotted line, you know, that is mankind has created consciousness to that point. Because what's happening is you got to create the consciousness to get there. Then you hook up with the soul. That's what it's there for. And then the agenda is that's going forward. But when you do hook up with that, when you then have that complete consciousness, all of the information that was in your history, everything, and not with names, dates, and picture books. Okay. I don't mean it that way, but it's there, you know, it's been synthesized, et cetera, because that has had to be there to get you up to that point and give you enough incarnations so that you can work your way to get to there. Because once you've got to there in that third initiation, you then go on and you make a little bridge and a Karana, you build it over to the permanent physical atom. In the same experience, you go up to the Buddhic permanent atom and the Atmic permanent. It's like trout fishing. Okay, you've thrown a line out, so to speak. You might not have got the trout, but you made a connection. It's just like a line on a fishing. And so you've made the connection, so you have the contact. Because this is how you've moved all along, is building all that consciousness to get up to there. You had to build that bridge to get to the soul. Then it gets easier to build a bridge after that because you've done it. Then you go, you make those contacts before that third initiation experience is over. Okay. Because when you do that, at the very end of that experiment, and I think they talk about it in these books, I'm pretty sure they do, they say you will see the star, or you will see the light. I don't know what they call it. Anyway, I think they kind of call it a star. And I imagine that is really seeing for the first time the light, that's that monadic light that is now in a level of reflection. You're not seeing it directly because it's a reflection of reflection, but you see that. And that basically, I think, is the end of that experiment. They say you're on the top of the mountain or something and you see the star that's so bright that everything else around it is darkened because it's so bright, or something like that. So so how close does that come to what you asked me? As a question, you asked me a question.
Well, I was just looking at it from the bigger perspective of the Earth having taken the fifth initiation already, and humanity had not gotten there, and then working its way to that. But it really does sound the same, where the soul is already sitting up there, and we have to get there. So, yeah.
Yeah, but remember the soul, the fifth initiation, if the subjective realm of the planet, then it's up on level 5. It has disconnected from materialism. Your soul has not.
But the soul is subjectively on the higher than us, and we have to get there.
By one little notch. But the point that I'm making is
Right.
the subjective aspect of being on the fifth for the planet does not negate the fact that we are down here in the lower 3. For starters, we're still in substance. We're still in matter, matter, if you will. So there's a ways to go for an individual or a collective humanity to get to the fifth. But you got to get, the biggie is the third. I mean, the big for humanity, he says the right now, the astral plane is the toughest one. And granted, I'm sure it's the toughest is because we're so submerged in the astral plane. Okay. Rightfully so and wrongfully so at the same time. In other words, you had the physical, you got to go through the astral. It is all 7 levels, is just a big flowing current. So you don't have stepping stones. It's, it's a giant mosh pit in many respects. But what it was meant to do was to perfectly reflect the light on the Buddhic plane into the second. We aren't there yet. Okay, in a perfected reflection down in the astral plane. We got a lot of stuff going on down there that is confusing and confused, both. But anyway, so the second, he says, is the toughest, but that's just because that's where the majority of the body of humanity is operating at this point in time. But the third, the reason they say that it is the first, as far as the masters are concerned, or the hierarchy, or anybody above the astral plane, it's the first real initiation, is because it connects you with that spiritual triad. But to do that, because then it connects you with conscious, you're fully conscious. You do not need a soul to reincarnate. Prior to this, you do. Prior to the third, the only way you get back here is when that soul decides it's time for you to reincarnate. Okay. That's why it's called the causal body. So after you have gone through the third, you have made the connection to the spiritual triad which is where the hierarchy will live up there, because they do not need a physical body. They are fully conscious without it. Where we've had to be incarnated, have our whatever our conscious experiences are, and then it gets buttoned up, they get stored, but you don't have a choice of coming back again whenever you want. Okay. So the let me see where I want to go with this now. So you've bring me back to where you were, because my mind is off on probably
We
some
make the
other thing.
connection. Once we
Oh,
make the
yes.
connection,
Yeah, because you're talking about the fifth versus the third. In a sense, it was where we went off on this one. So oh, and to do the third, you have to be ready to leave here. To get to the third, you have to have disconnected with the astral plane. And that is actually for the majority of people here, that is where their love is focused. That is where their emotions are attached. That is what they are. I mean, they're into it 100% belief. That's why I said to you earlier, as far as I can figure out, most people, yes, they may have a Christian background or they have a religious background. They got to heaven. People are definitely going to heaven. When they die, they're going to see them again and all of this and that, but they don't really believe that. Okay. They are going to try to keep them here as long as possible. They lose a child. They are devastated beyond any words can put. Okay.
Right.
And it may be that child came and only needed a short visit. It may be that child came to make some point to those parents and brothers and sisters. Who knows? Okay. But they don't really believe that yet. They're not that level of believers. Okay. That they can understand that, yes, they can say, and is in heaven, all right, but they just can't really, that's to succor some pain at that point. It's not just, okay, well, all right, his journey was ended, this time, and in the way that he's going to say in here shortly, and he's said in other places, it's like when you get up into that spiritual triad, when you are functioning there, the hierarchy, he makes a remark, we'll probably get to it today, I'm not sure, that the difference is they understand that this is the dream world. They understand that this is just the actors. Okay. This is, and that you didn't die and you're fine. Okay. But down here, this is real. On that astral plane, those emotional connections are real and they're expected to be forever, whatever the normal age of, it's like they say a father, one of the, I think it's in, Lord of the Rings, a father should never have to bury his son, for example. That was one of them. In other words, that's our mindset here, because we do function in time, and that is the order of things. And so basically coming up to that third is you've got to come to terms with that. You've got to be able to give all that up. You have to be able to say the world will be just fine without me. And most people are not ready for that. And it's no different than, I think I mentioned to you, I said, hey, so you're married. Okay. So you don't even have that choice because you gave it up. in as much as you have to go back to that partner and extract yourself, or at least your body, and say, you know, I need to be able to do whatever I need to have that right back. I need to be able to do whatever I want to do with it, and that I need to feel free to be able to risk my life. Because the thing about this is, you go into with every initiation, you go into the unknown. You go, it's like the master. They said, you can't see what's ahead. It's like when they talk about on initiation 6, he said, you have to make a choice of which path you're going to take, and you don't know where any of them lead or what the experience is going to be. Okay. So we're there. You're always minus the unknown, whatever is out there next. And you have to be willing to go there. And so the second initiation is difficult because you extract yourself from your emotions. You have to come to terms with it. Nothing will pull you back there. Okay. And at the third, you're facing your own possibility of your own demise, and you're consciously making that choice. And in a sense, you are, because what you're going to do is going to lead to the soul being gone in the destruction of the causal body. So then you got no way back. So the point is, you should be happy about it. But all you've known is what's down here. You know, in other words, all these incarnations and all of this that you've been going through for eons of time are all you know, that you know for sure. Because somehow you're aware that this keeps happening, or at least that happened to you this time, and that's all you know, whatever your realm of knowledge is. So risking it all, and it is, to me, it's a game of hardball at that point, because you got to play it 100%. You cannot cheat. This is all so calibrated that it's unbelievable. So, and when I say calibrated, it's, you know, the old saying from Christianity, God knows everything you do. He does. And not only that, he can measure it. It's on a scale, and it's you either are on that scale at exactly that equation or not. And if you fall off the equation, boom, you're back down. You know, it's extremely precise, in the same way that a transit arrives on time. It's precise. So does that answer anything, or just give you more questions?
Oh, yeah, no, it's good. Yeah.
That's why I want to have discussions about this material, because I can blow through it all. But like I said, it was written by somebody who had all the background in all of the DK material, because he wrote it. So he writes this with the same awareness as if you had the awareness of all of this, because that's why he's so precise, is because he's got all of that background. But we don't, when we first start hitting this stuff. We didn't get this in kindergarten and grade school and, you know, high school, and this would have been civics or whatever, I guess. Something like that. So you're thinking, Tom?
Was I'm not sure.
Well,
no, I was just taking
Mm.
that all in. So it's a lot to digest, but
yeah,
it is a lot. But I get it.
Humble pie.
It adds clarity, right? Yeah, it's very humbling.
yeah. I mean, it is, because the first experiences you get of a little euphoria with this, you think you arrived,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. And I could sit here all day and say, yeah, I think I've ready to give everything up, but I've never really been presented with that, so I don't know. You know? So
Yeah, yeah, because it is giving it all up, and at the same time, you don't know where you're going.
right.
Yeah.
So I guess the best
So-
thing we can do is just be.
Yes. Yeah, and just follow because the only step that ever matters is your next step, whatever it is. So if you just put yourself in a position to be open to what comes, because like I said, this journey was done by people without the books and without anybody else telling them how to do it. And they got through it fine, because you will have help on the other side. There will be help. When you need help, there will be help there to guide you, because this is the one, I think, Donnie, you'll remember, they talked about the first and the second initiations can possibly be done in group, because they're dealing with unprincipled matter and it's just moving through it. The third one cannot. It had to be done by individual. And the point he was making when he said it in whichever one of these books is that there's going to be a time when the previously individuals could be helped on each stage, because there was few coming up and there were sufficient hierarchical numbers to help a few. And so I think he's implying that this will speed up the number of people who make this jump, so that I think that was in the context that he said the group could be done in group first and second, but not the third, because that has to be done individually. And so that he meant the helpers, hierarchical type helpers, can help them through this. And but of course you can't do it in group. You're meeting your own soul, you know, and your soul is yours with your history and your uniqueness, and it's your journey and your interaction with it as an individual, because this is the process now of individualization at the same time. It's the first three. You start out, you know, and you work through group development, but ultimately you're meant to end up as an individual. The groupie stuff is in the astral plane, and just the formation of it, a lot of it's in the physical, to even get you to a point where you can have a soul kind of thing. So but you get the process of individual. Now, no sooner do you do that than the next three start you off again in a group. You're in the hierarchy where you're now working with a group, and it'll have to do with your race structure as to where in the hierarchy you are and your advancement level after that. And then when you get up into the higher initiations, you go back to doing the upper ones as an individual again. So, and then it's the next three, which is 4, 5, and 6. And you end up individualizing on the third and again on the 6th. You know, the whole key is this is all reflection of reflection of reflection that you started out with the original material. And you look at Annie Besant, and she talks about the reflection. So it's the 1, 2, 3 and the 4, 5, 6 pattern each other even, kind of thing. So, and then there's 7, 8, 9, which I have very little I could ever possibly even say about those. And there's not that much in the raisin initiations either. But it's, again, I think you start out with the same type of thing, so that you've got the 1, 2, 3, the 4, 5, 6, and the 7, 8, 9 are just patterns after patterns. it's very mechanical in a sense, the process, and you figure that out as time goes on, that, oh, well, here we go again, you know. And didn't it say something about rhythmic? Because when you get into cosmic consciousness and he starts talking about timing and the pattern for timing, it usually starts, it actually, I think, quite is similar to the standard patterns we know. There's the birth. You know, something probably starts in December, late December. You're not seeing much of it until maybe March. It's done by the end of May. It's high point at best, probably. And then it's all going to settle in and looks like it disappears through the summer and the fall for any of these. They're longer, I think, than people realize because they don't see the beginning. They just see the high point when there's a lot of phenomena. But again, like I said, you just go along about your business, your meditation, your daily work, your responsibilities, because you've got to take care of everything that's here too. You cannot have spiritual development at the expense of a lot of other human beings that you were responsible for that now you're going to ditch. That's not in the game plan. You take care of all of those responsibilities. And there's time for it to be done, all of it. You know, one works and functions in time, and eventually the others don't function in time. So they just play when there's time, so to speak, here as far as fitting stuff in. So, but yeah, it should be sobering because it really is. And he is going to talk in here about the clear, cold light. And logic, I think, is one of the things, because I think he's talking about the Buddhic plane. But it is, that energy gets colder. The warmth comes from the creation of consciousness. Okay. In fact, he says on the 7th, he says, one of the things you have to learn on the 7th initiation, and he says he didn't know much about it, but you come to understand the need for the warmth. Okay. That is created by this union of spirit and matter, because that's where the warmth is. Because if you get out in space, it's not warm out there. Okay. Excuse me just a minute. I want to get some of this crap off of there. You know, it's pretty cold once you get out of our atmosphere, I assume. That sunlight hits our atmosphere, it gets warm again. But you get nailed by that stuff. I mean, it's a burn. It's not the kind of burn necessarily that you think of, although you can sometimes feel it. It's not like that you got lit up by a match and you're running down the street on fire. But it is a burn, and it will slow you down for a while. It gives you a new appreciation for whatever else is out there. But and it probably takes away some of what was with that burn. And you don't feel it as heat. And he talks about it in clear, cold light also. Let's see. Have we got some more time? What are we? We got at least 15 minutes. Any questions before I go any further? Okay.
I feel like I have I can make a better plan if I had a little more back knowledge, like a book of Bull, kind of a checklist to figure out where I'm at, where I need to go to, instead of just like, here, you know, like you're only allowed to use 10% of your brain and we're going to mind wipe you, you know, go ahead, have fun.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, you can see when you start to look at this, you can understand their game plan and their
Yeah.
objective in today's world. And you can see why they go after the pineal gland.
Yep.
There certainly was a lot of initial research done. I don't hear too much about it right now, but because you can only play it so long and then there's something new coming out. But that there was supposedly concerted effort to affect the functioning of the pineal gland. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think 3 of the things were EMF, like through Wi-Fi, through other, you know, forms of, you know, like electronics and radiation and stuff like that, aluminum oxide, and then that's being released inside the atmosphere, and then fluoride. I think those are the big 3 calcifiers for the pineal gland.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the objective was to just stop this process
Yeah.
from ever being able to happen.
Well, I think that's been throughout history, you know, like they didn't have the technology to do it, so they had to, you know, kind of, you know, like rule with an iron fist, and everybody would just, you know, invade each other, and you know, always have a subservient class. You have the elites and then everybody else.
Yeah. And and I don't know where it was in all of this in the last year or two, where there was, because I don't remember who was talking, but there had been a comment about we need to get this done now because they have found a way out. Well,
Yeah.
this is the way out. Okay. You know, basically, yeah, it is the way out to move up into that spiritual hierarchy and beyond that. And then, like I said, when you get to the 6th initiation, they say, okay, now you got this number of routes to go. Where do you want to go? But they're all out of here. They're not here. You cannot stay here. I think Blavatsky talks about the weary pilgrim, but there is no place to stay permanently on this planet. In other words, you cannot get to the top and then park and say, okay, well, now I'm gonna enjoy this. And I've gotten here, and so on and so forth. It doesn't work that way. This planet was not for that purpose. This planet is at least at this point in time, and probably not going to change for a while, is a process that starts out with the nursery and works new life that can become conscious to process through. And then that, whatever that end product is, when they get to the top, they get to 7th initiation, 6th, 7th, they're deciding where they're going to go out in the system. And they're going to go ultimately to 4 places, and they were paths originally of involution. Now we can go back out. You don't have to take the same path. But one leads to the cosmic astral. Another one leads to the cosmic mental. A third, the other one is a cosmic Buddhic, which I think there was only one for the cosmic Buddhic. And now they've added some other stuff as some other alternatives too. And there's constellations that are involved, but the bottom line is you don't get to stay here. So if some beings that are down here think this is a great place to just stay, you know, I got it set up and we can be here forever. It's the antithesis of the design of the planet. So it's working against the evolution of this planet.
Do you get like a travel guide for all the places to go so you can kind of figure out what you want to do?
Well, I imagine they have a lot. Whoa, are you talking about for the ones who are leaving?
Yeah.
No, you go out blind.
Yeah, I don't
Is there a
like that. I
movie
like
called The Traveler's Guide to the Universe or something like that?
Yeah. It's like, man, you know, I'm on this desert stuff and I really wanted, you know, some waterfront, you know, so yeah, totally made a bad choice.
Well, yeah, but you see, you're imagining that you're going out there with some aspect of form. By the time you get there, according to this material, you are a fully conscious unit of light. And that's what you're traveling in. Okay.
You're going to
So
look back
water-
at yourself and laugh.
Yeah.
While you're on cannabis, Bill.
So
Yeah.
water might not survive around you.
And
That's a possibility. So you not that you would have the free run of the universe out there, because I'm sure you wouldn't, because again,
No.
your vibration and calibration, so to speak, has to be appropriate for wherever it is you're going to be, or wherever you land, or you lodge, or you go here, or you go there. It's the same way here. I mean, we are stratified in terms of the essence of the equation that we are. But
Hey, that is a really awesome statement there, Carla. That is, I'm gonna have to remember that stratified thing. Bull knows what I'm talking about. Tom may not.
okay. But anyway, yeah, so I mean, you're gonna be in a different vehicle, Bull. Yeah, at that point, that's the way he describes it. Is that is the goal for humanity to, when it's accomplished, moving all the way up that chart, is that we are meant to be a fully conscious unit. And obviously you're not in form, so it's the formless, so that the light should be it's a form of light, whatever the form of light is that's at that level.
I just want to go to somewhere cool where I'm going to have fun.
Well, you know, the interesting thing is he says in there that, I mean, you have no idea what you're even going to be doing. They describe a little bit about it, because it's relative to ray structures, and what the likelihood is that this would be within your realm of activity. You can look at it. It's back. You've got the book. It's Rays and Initiations. Just go back and look at the initiations, probably 6, 7. They don't say much at all about 8 and 9, but or 5 and 6, 5, 6, and 7 would be, read a little bit about that, and you'll have some sense of that things will be different when you get off of this planet. Yeah, but you probably will, whatever your makeup construction of your makeup is at that point in time, will be appropriate for wherever you're going. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see if I could use more than 10% of my brain, and I had a little travel guide, and I had, history of bull and, like a Cliff Notes form. I don't know. I think I could just understand more.
I know, but you probably won't need that at that point, or you will learn. I mean, you're always at the bottom. This is the other thing you need to understand, is even if you got to the top of this one, you're at the bottom again the minute you exit here. You're just at the bottom of somewhere else. And literally, you're always at the bottom. You're always at the bottom looking up, period. And if that's not enough, this 7 dimensions we've got here with the 7 subplanes is just, there's 6 above it. So you got a long journey. You'll
you're moving up to the bottom of the next barrel.
That's absolutely right. Yeah. If you think you accomplished anything, that somehow is the end all, and now you get to rest or something, forget it.
I am a huge loser.
Oh yeah, but look at the frontier that's before you at any given point along this journey. There's always something more to experience that's a little different. It's just like now you read the marriages of zones 3, 4, and 5. Okay. And she defines there, I mean, very, very well. I think she defines basically the energy pattern of all 3 of those.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's like, hey, the 3rd here, the atmic plane, is different than the 4th plane or the 5th plane. She describes it in terms of how we express them, the personality. I'm sure it's very accurate, but the energy is different on each one of those, and we can recognize it when you get exposed to it, kind of thing. But prior to that, you're just not even aware of that kind of energy. So it's all a journey. It's all something new. So, but there's no parking.
Did Donnie get the Doris Lessig books?
I did, sir.
Yeah, dude.
I'm reading Shakasta now.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I didn't get far enough in there to give you a call yet. I'm only on page 60 something right now, but it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Those first few pages, just like, whoa. Like,
Yeah. That was different. Pretty cool.
Just the way I like how she writes. She puts down a lot of information in a small amount of words. Very descriptive.
Yeah, she's something else. Something else.
I think one of the originals, I found those right when she published them, and they came out. And on the book flap, I think it says that she was invaded with the ideas to write these books, is the way she described it. Because she was, a woman's writer, clearly classified as a woman's writer at that point in time, best woman's writer in the world. I mean, she had a world reputation, which knocked her off. They were really pissed at her over these books. because they thought she'd abandoned the women's movement, which she did not. But these came, obviously she had to write them prior to their publication. And I think she had most of them set in place before the first one was published. And there's 5 of them. So, I mean, she was well on her way, I believe, to having almost all that completed when the first ones came out, so she could go back and do some other stuff that put her back instead with her normal group. And these did not fare well. You know, there wasn't a high volume of people buying this book, but she was well respected prior to that. She had a well respected publisher, and so the odds are they would be kept in print or at least available. And she turned down they asked her when she was 60, which was her second Saturn cycle, if she I think they hinted to her that they would like to give her the Nobel Prize. And, you know, there's a lot of lobbying for that. So it might have been the people who are going to lobby for her. And she just said, no, I won't accept it. If you give it to me, I will not accept it. Which was a good move, because once you do, then there's a certain degree of responsibility you have to the reputation of being the Nobel Prize winner. So when she was 90, which was her third Saturn cycle, they just gave it to her. But that guarantees that her books are going to stay in print. And I think she's one of the very few people who could have even had those books published, even at that time.
She makes J.K. Rowling and Harry Potter look like, you know.
Oh yeah. Oh no, she is a phenomenal writer.
Yeah.
She was she said when she was younger, and she's got a Mercury in Scorpio, so that's her mind. She said everything went in, nothing came out. In other words, probably when I'm talking about when she was in her 10, 11, 12, or teens, it just all went in, but nothing came back out. And then obviously when it did, I mean, now you're seeing the content, the level content. And she was a communist at one point after World War II, and she was in England, and she was part of the Communist Party. And then she saw what was happening. You know, the marketing of the communist philosophy and the actual application of it turned out to be quite different. But even DK liked the concept in principle, but he did indicate the application of it was, you know, he was very sad to see, let's put it that way. So she, and people just at the time after World War II, I mean, you did not leave the Communist Party, period. And so for her in England to have left it was a big deal, you know, but she was not ever afraid to do what she felt was right. So. But no, her ability to capture human behavior in words is phenomenal. So, and I thought she got the fourth ray, the king. I mean, and that's really what she's, I mean, that is the Buddhic plane. And she captured that one very well, I thought. She captured them all, actually. She captured the girl in the fifth dimension, too. Pretty well, basic human beings. And the Atmic plane, too. The original one that goes down. And when the drum beats, the drum beats. And that was actually a terminology at that point in time. She did not coin that, but that was understood by people during that period of time that were connected with this journey, when the drum beats, they drop everything and go. And because I did a little research group once, and I remember the guy who was in it, he said, you know, I'm with my girlfriend, but she knows when the drum beats, I'm going to drop her and leave, and I'm off on my spiritual journey. When I get called, then that takes precedent, and everything else goes by the wayside. But that was a term he used also, was when the drum beats, and so that was the type of pull that was there. That would have been in the 70s and the early 80s, but the 60s had just happened, you know, and so the 70s were just settling in on what the 60s had turned over, upside down, emptied the garbage can, so to speak, spilled it all out. Then it all had to be sorted out, and how humanity was going to restructure their lives after they had had this impact. And so, you know, and that was probably the 70s were kind of the sorting it out. And by the 80s, she had produced this work. But there was still a strong impulse there. I think the impulse now has waned or been torqued, you know, or tried to be rerouted from going forward, would probably maybe be a better way of saying it. That you're in the regrouping of the ones who would want to reroute this and not go forward with the impetus that happened in the late 60s, would have regrouped by the 90s. And then now we're 90s, and then the early 2000s, we're what, 30 years in, we're one Saturn cycle from wherever they started, to try to short circuit all this. So, questions?
Not at this particular moment. I have a lot to ponder.
Yeah, my brain's pretty full.
So when you're pondering, what is the principal foundation of that ponder? I mean, there might be people who watch these would like to understand that.
Just try to reflect back on everything we discuss. I don't know. I mean, it's just difficult for me to explain right now.
So, but do you apply it to how you think you are, have been, will be, what?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I try to apply it in current, but I don't try to think too far ahead anymore, because I try to just kind of go with the flow and be with the moment and just be, like we kind of talked about a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
But when I do meditate, I do, you know, before I enter into that quietness, I some of these thoughts cross my mind, and I just kind of ponder on it for a little bit and just figure how I can apply this to life and what it means for me in the future. And then I just try to go dead silent and just be.
Mm-hmm. But I think in the course of having worked with this material now, because it's been a number of months, you've had changes, right?
Absolutely. I would say I look at almost everything much differently now than I used to in the past. And even that changes daily. And, you know, what I might have read last week might take a different meaning this week. So,
yeah. And so in that terms, then the different meaning comes from within you, right?
mm-hmm.
I mean, on the overall, I'm guessing, I mean, it could be that you walked by the 7-Eleven and saw a sign and it triggered something that gave you a totally different meaning. But
Right.
maybe not so with having to walk by a 7-Eleven, but that somehow within you, this process he's talking about of those ideas now being able to get through from the soul level to the brain level, so on and so forth. You build, if you build this pattern as you're working with this, which actually really automatically build if you're working with the material, you're not the one who's having to figure out how to construct all this. It's the awareness of it alone will give it a go ahead. I would, am I to assume then that they've been constructive changes for you?
I think so. I think so.
How about the wife? What does she think?
I would, well, she's not here to answer right now, but if there's literally no more arguments in the house, it tells me something right there. So
Okay. Yeah.
no, but it's good, because what it has done, one of the big things that this has done for me is that I really do look within now with pretty much everything. I mean, things that happen at work, things that happen in world, things just outside, things that happen outside of this, where, you know, some people had, and I was one of them, where you have the tendency to kind of point out externally, that made me do this, or that made me have this emotion. Well, is it really that what triggered it? It's something inside and how you're processing it. And that's one of the big things that I've been taking away from this, is kind of self-reflection and, you know, whatever's going to happen in the world is going to happen in the world. There's really not much you can do about it. So the only thing you can do about it is, how are you internally going to deal with it? And so you can deal with it and make it your own personal hell, or you can deal with it in a way that's just like, hey, it is what it is. Time for me to keep moving forward.
That's like what you just said, Tom. It's like what's the guy's name? Viktor Frankl, I think was his name. He was a concentration camp survivor, and he said something very similar. He's like, while we can't control what was going to happen, you know, day to day, hour to hour, minute to minute, the one thing that you always had control over was how you interpreted and how you emotionally like reacted to the situation. So that's the only part of control that anyone inside of those camps ever had. So,
Yeah.
you know, they get everything else from you, but, you know, at the end of the day, it was, you know, how you personally would react to it. And that was under your control. So that's cool.
You know, and that was a big, powerful book, because I got that in humanities in the, let me see, 60s. Viktor Frankl's book was one of my humanities assigned books for one of my humanities classes.
Okay.
The Meaning of
Like
Life, was that it, or which one?
I think it was Man's Search for Meaning or something like that.
Yeah, okay. The Meaning for Life, Man's Search for Meaning, right. And why he was a survivor and others didn't. That was part of the issue in that one.
But yeah, it definitely changes the thought process. Just how you perceive things, how you process them, how you look at things. And then, you know, definitely changing, you know, behaviors, I think for the better, you know, as far as, you know, trying to balance all your levels out, you know, you know, something that previously made it, you know, like might have elicited like a negative emotional reaction. You just kind of take everything in stride now. So again,
Right.
It is what it is. Let's just keep going.
And you know, I think it's necessary that we have to do that, especially in this pursuit, because you have to be able to mute all that stuff out so that we can keep going forward and moving up, right? If we get too taken by what's happening outside, we're just going to get stuck there. Can't dwell on it.
So Bull, what else? Because you've also been involved with this now for the same amount of time as everybody else.
Hmm.
So your
So
impact for you.
I'd say like we talked about this on the phone, a little bit. It was like pretty much, especially when I was going through all the transition stuff, like from military to, civilian life, everything else like that. Like I felt, I was always just like a closed fist. And this has kind of allowed me to relax and just kind of, oh, okay, well, I can't control things. I can't will things to happen. They're just going to happen. And I gotta, like there's things I can control. There's things I can't. And I just got to go with the flow, pretty much with how the universe is putting things down for me.
Yeah, and then you had the chart. So then you're also, are you talking about your transits?
I'm talking about transits, but just kind of my overall, view of the world, just how I operated in it.
Yeah, and
if I worked 10 times harder, or I, did this research or did this study, or, I could just, will things to happen that, probably weren't supposed to happen. And sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't, but it was, that's a hard way to live because you're always at like 9,000 RPMs, So just being able to relax and take a deep breath, and then, instead of staring down a soda straw, just kind of taking the panoramic view.
yeah. So I'll ask you the same question. So how does this work out for your family?
I think it works out great. As far as it's just easier to interact with, my son and my wife too, because I'm not there's no expectation other than just to be in the moment, with them.
Mhm.
So I like not rushing and trying to get to the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. It's like, where am I going? It's like, I'm here now. To enjoy that.
Yeah, so that was the question I asked Tom too. How does your wife like it? Because it generally has some effect at home.
Yeah, she's still kind of her, and like, from doing her chart, she already knows everything. So
Well, that makes two of
Yeah.
you, right?
No, I know I don't know anything.
Interestingly enough, I mean, you're saying that in a joking manner in a sense, but interestingly enough, when you do actually come to realize you don't know anything is when you really start your growth pattern on this spiritual trip.
Cool.
Yeah. And with that, I'm going to bounce up to the one above you there, Donnie, who can tell you about not knowing anything.
I'm just learning to live again in a quiet way, I think, which is interesting. I'm just kind of letting the things happen around me and do the things I need to do, and I'm not thinking about them. And I'm learning to just be more and more on a daily basis. I find that I can do it. I can do it for much longer now than I ever could before, where I'm much more empty. I don't want to say empty, just very quiet. And we've all absorbed a lot of material, I think, at this point. And DK mentions that that's really important through the process to absorb a lot of this. And it just seems to be there. It's there when you need it and when you want it. And it's just very slow. It's just very slow. you know,
Yeah, there are not that many hand grenades in this.
just, yeah, and sometimes, you know, you really wish it would speed up certain aspects of life where you just kind of want to move on to the next thing or get started on something that's going to bear a little more fruit or something. And I mean that in terms of business and such, but you have to watch all of this play out. And then there's a real process of getting comfortable and watching the whole thing play out too at the same time. And, you know, I think we've all experienced a lot of the emotions, you know, that are necessary. So there's no need for any knee-jerk responses anymore. We've experienced, you know, we've done just about everything physically. So that's just kind of letting go of old patterns and habits that just seem to linger around and kind of cleaning out the closet a little bit here and there and just trying to be. I love listening to these conversations. You know, this is great.
Yeah, it's important that people understand. I mean, if anybody who's going to watch this understands how you guys process this material, because I can read it straight all day long and just read. And I won't, I mean, for me, it's not boring, but I've got decades of background in it. So I know a lot of the backstory in this material, but for somebody who hasn't been exposed to that, a lot of these words just seem like real simple words, but they've got whole backstories just to one word in here sometimes that it's significant to point out. The other thing I would ask is, so how does your wife like the changes of the last, year or whatever? How does it impact the family and you? And
well, she had retired from the military too. So that's a process that I think we all go through. So she was kind of going through her own decompression from military service. And, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I think there's an atmosphere of freedom around. And that's, I don't want to say I set the precedent for that. I don't want to say that's a bad word, but do you, you know, you do what makes you happy. I support you. Please support me on my journey, if, you know, to whatever extent you can, because this is what's happening. The kids, you know, the great part about the kids is I recognize them now as their own being with their own little charts and their own little lives that they have to live. So it's very easy. I don't need to suck them into any of my own ideals or any of that. And I know that they're a product of, you know, a combination of all of these things. So it's, you know, it's very pleasant to watch them grow up. I don't feel any pressure to make them act or be any certain way, or, you know, or make them conform to any sort of anything. So I just let them go whatever direction they want to kind of explore things, and let them try and fail and try again and do what they like. As far as Kim and I go, I think there's just real freedom around to kind of do what we like individually, and then sometimes it links up together and we work on projects together or whatnot. And she's got her own spiritual journey that she's going on, and she's a lot of Pisces, so it's interesting. She doesn't need to talk about any of it. I generally used to want to talk about everything, and Bull and Tom both know that. So she taught me to shut up in a lot of ways, besides the material teaching me to shut up and Carla teaching me to shut up. I mean, she taught me to shut up too. So I got a lot more quiet over this time, and there's no anxiety. There used to be an air of probably some stress or anxiety around or tension around my being and having to find what direction I needed to go. I needed to find this material, first of all, I'm not saying I was on the wrong track. It took me a long time, but there was a lot of anxiety to get to that point, to relax for me, for whatever reason. I had to go through a lot of different spiritual studying and group stuff and all of that to find what made the most, or not, what is true. So once the astrology came along, once we got deeper into this material, and after letting it synthesize and it starts to make sense, then all that frustration and tension, it all just kind of started to fade away. And then it just continues to kind of fade away, until you can just be. And I never knew what that meant before until the last couple months, what it meant to just literally be for hours on end of just looking at, just being, just, allowing things to come in. And then when nothing was coming in, to just be quiet and not feel like I needed to be in the books. I've taken a lot of time off from reading recently, even. I just started reading Shikasta, and that's a real great, a great introduction. I mean, it's a fantastic book. I'm looking forward to getting into the rest of them too. But I think it's just much more airy. My whole life, there's no worry, much less worry of any sort. So there's that.
And one thing I forgot to ask Bull was, because you were talking about your relationship with your son, but I think that your awareness level on that is really, and I know how important that is to you.
Yeah. So it's kind of he's 9 now, so he's off to doing all the things that, are going to form, his personality and his character and all the other stuff like that. So I think about how I was brought up, how in a super crazy, like, religious home, and they're trying to stamp me out in the same mold or whatever. And then tried to, I guess, kind of recreate me, or like create me in what they thought was acceptable. But then that often clashed with that relationship with both of my folks. And so I didn't want to raise my son in that same thing. I wanted to figure out what he was interested in, support all of his things, and build up what his attributes are, because I recognize that he's a different, person, completely. So there's, there's a lot of likenesses and stuff that, things that we both like to do and whatever, but I really try to focus on him as an individual, and not, force all that, like my way or the highway kind of stuff down there, on him, but giving him that freedom to, kind of how Donnie was saying, hey, there's this thing. Okay, I'll try it. I didn't really like that. Okay, I'm gonna try this. Try this. Because in the end, I think that's kind of like a more loving approach than, trying to force somebody in a mold that they don't fit in.
And it seems to me from what you were explaining is that, because you started on the avenue of, searching for things in terms of things that are hidden, in other words, gems and stuff like that. But that he has, if you explained to me, I think you said, you you're learning to watch because he has a mind that will classify, that will order things, puts all
Yep.
his little stuff together the way he wants, which is really leaving room for him to develop aspects that maybe nobody else would have, or no other circumstance would have made him to do. But this is natural. In other words, these are natural parts of him that now have the avenue to open up.
Right. And then having the support, having, I mean, like a kind of like resource, not like financial, like necessarily, but, hey, I'm interested in, whatever this is. Okay, well, if you're interested in that, then we need to get you this gear or this, whatever, to be able to, kind of continue research on that, or, so that's one of the things that I try to do for him, is anything that he's into. And then I was like, okay, cool. Well, let's fan those, sparks of imagination or the sparks of interest. And then here's what the next level looks like. Okay, cool. And then if he wants to go there, he's not ready quite yet. Okay, that's fine. But I think that, and hopefully it will build him into more decisive, confident person who knows exactly, like which way is up and down, than I was coming in, at his same age, or, stuff like that.
Yeah, which has to make him happy.
Yeah. And he's a naturally, super happy kid and stuff as it is. So, but it's just observing him, it's cool because, you can see that he's, his mind is engaged and he's processing, because he's super processing about everything, just, breaking it down and figuring things out. So that's really cool.
Yeah, that's good development at the age he's at.
Yeah. But that's kind of what I want to do for his whole, life and stuff like that, as like much time as I have left in it for him, is to, be there as the non-judgmental support, old wise sage, to, give him advice and give him help, and, help him down whatever, path he's going. I think, that's kind of parenting, I guess, the, goal of parenting anyway, but just in a way that doesn't shatter the individual growth or the individual tendencies,
Yeah, we know.
Be a facilitator, not a dictator.
Yeah.
That's been my approach too.
What a different world, man. What a whole different world it'll be if everybody's parenting like that, right?
Yeah.
Tom and we need to get Tom back down, get in the car and bring his kids down here. His kids and my kids get along really great. And Bull, you're always welcome too.
It's coming soon enough.
Yeah.
School's out after this week.
Yeah, here too. So.
And then who knows? Maybe we'll just trek further south and crash Bull's place.
Yeah.
Kids love the ocean.
I've done that.
I got lots of firewood and a huge fire pit. We can talk about things all night.
Well, guys, are we ready to wrap this one up?
I think so.
Okay. So we made two things. One, we're probably going to create a new group separate from this one. And so if any of you guys know somebody that might be interested in being participating in another one of these, let Donnie know. Okay. Or anybody else who hears this who can contact Donnie on the website if that's of any interest to him. And number two, the last two lessons, I haven't listened to them online, but I think just reading without this discussion is probably not a winner. So I may think about redoing those two. Certainly with Donnie at the very least. I don't know if you guys have the time or what, but give me some input on it, take a look at them. And I just think they're a little drier. I think we need this discussion along with the material. So,
Yeah, I agree.
yeah. So we may, we can do one of two things. We can just back up and do those two the next two Sundays with some dialogue, or try to schedule them separately, which would demand a lot of time. But you guys work it out and see what you think.
I don't think we could ever read, just like you said, though, we read it differently and we hear it differently every time anyway. So reading those rules again can only benefit us. Right?
Yeah, because if so, we could schedule the rule one or wherever we are. Yeah, rule one. It would be rule one. We could do rule one next week again then if you want. Yeah, and they will look different. They always do. They never look the same twice.
Right.
Well,
So-
can we finish next week and then go back and do 1 and 2?
Yeah, I was
We're
gonna
like
say we
halfway
got
through.
halfway through 3.
Oh. Sure. Yeah, we could finish 3 and then we'll go back. Because we'll
Good.
just plug those in to either in place of the other ones or in addition to the other two, the 1 and the 2 when the time comes. So. And like I said, keep it in mind that if you know someone who might benefit from something like this, any of the veterans that we know, we'll be looking, we won't be putting it together next week, but we'd like to at least have an idea of who the individuals are, and charts would have to be done anyway. So, and summer, we got some high point in summer here. We'll see. I don't know what everybody else's subject agendas are, so on and so forth, but we'll try to work with them.
Sounds good.
Okay, so we're done.
Yep.
Well, next week. Well, we're never really done.
No, but
Never. The journey is always only at the beginning.